Thank you. And listen, it's so nice to have you back. Not that the boys weren't good on their own. But it's like extra. Well, it's like the best icing ever. It's like cream cheese frosting icing instead of like supermarket frosting. You know, I didn't think I was going to talk about frosting today.
Yeah, but you never
But
know.
you
when
never
that's
know.
gonna be. You never know. No.
Spirit is in all things, even in jar frosting. Okay. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Again, every week, it is just such an amazing thing to have you here. I'm so grateful for your presence. I knew you were out there somewhere on the other side of that camera, but it's so nice to have what we call a demonstration, meaning proof came into action and showed up, so it's great that you're that demonstration. So this month, our larger theme has been about vision and being pulled by a vision. In other words, something almost energetically pulling you, that it's so yours to do that you almost can't help it. I mean, we can always say no, but you just feel compelled to positive change. But there is the human downside to that. When we look at vision and positive change, we can get excited, but we can lose sight of the fact that it often comes with change that is unanticipated. Change that we have trouble saying goodbye to certain things. And this whole last year is about so many things, but it's been about change. And I think we've been aware of things like, yeah, we really need to go in this positive direction, but I didn't realize we'd have to say goodbye to some things. And certainly we've literally said goodbye to many people who have passed this year from COVID and, of course, many other things. And some of our members, that life just took on a whole nother direction, and they moved before we could say goodbye in person. And that feels, I wish you well, because I know you're still watching, but it just feels odd that they would just kind of go, in a time that we're not supposed to see each other. And I had an interesting revelation within myself this week of a certain way that in the past that I've been able to deal with or process change in my life is no longer available. In fact, I was talking to someone this week in my office, and it kind of hit me. I went, I can't do that anymore. And I just wanted to share that with you, because sometimes change happens, and it's like, well, wait a second. I don't want that part to change. I want it to be exactly the same. So for about close to 60 years, and in Centers of Spiritual Living, we had a 1-week retreat in Pacific Grove, California, at the Asilomar Conference Grounds. Is anyone familiar with Asilomar? Some of you are. It's this amazing historic conference grounds, and Center of Spiritual Living just had this connection. I mean, think of it, almost 60 years for a full week, and they went to having about a 4-day format at different locations, and it seemed for many reasons to be the right thing. And of course, the last 2 years we haven't had anything for obvious reasons. But the 7-day format, which was a Sunday through a Saturday, somehow I just really resonated with. And the first couple days I would go, it would just be excitement, because I'd see so many people I hadn't seen in so long, especially my colleagues that I went to school with. And like, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. And then Tuesday I would energetically hit the wall, and I would sleep for almost 24 hours a day. I'd get up for meals, and what was great about Asilomar, they play the dinner bell, or you're like, food, just feed me now, it didn't even matter what it was. And then I'd walk in the beach and go back to sleep. And then by Wednesday, though, I would just be at this place of connectedness and clarity and groundedness. And I have made some of the most, life-changing decisions of my life on that beach after Tuesday, once I got over the 24-hour nap. And that wasn't the only part of it. And during that period that I was going, there was about 3 of my friends who I went to school of ministry with who were always there and that were part of that experience for me. In fact, one of them, when there wasn't spouses along, would be my roommate. And the 3 of them all have died since then. So I really got that that's not available for me anymore. The venue of that week format is not available, and the people that made it extra special aren't available. And you know, you don't need to email me retreat centers and things that I could do. I don't need to get fixed here. And there's other things, you know, form is constantly changing, but through this year of change and really of loss, I really got that thing that was so special isn't available. Of course, a larger vision makes other things available. And I know that something else will present itself in a completely different form, and that actually I just intuitively know that I shouldn't try to grasp and recreate that in some way, like, oh, quick, let's fix it. You know, let's go to this other place. Let's see, these other people that are kind of friends, let's make them to the first tier. Let them go. No, it'll work out somehow. But it's so interesting when something is so precious to you that when it is actually gone for good. So that's what I've been sitting this week, been thinking about change. And change is in the air in a lot of ways. And it is this Sunday in particular for many of my colleagues in Center for Spiritual Living. So some of you know this, some of you don't. I have a volunteer position within Center for Spiritual Living. I am a regional support coordinator. There's about 13 of us, and we are giving about 20 or so ministries apiece to support and just check up on with. So I have Zoom calls with the senior ministers from all these congregations once a quarter and check up with them. And then we have kind of a mass meeting on Zoom, all of us, once a quarter as well. And especially this year, it's been meaningful for people to meet that way. But in most the people that I'm with, I have Alaska, Montana, Oregon, and parts of Northern California. And in Oregon and Northern California, their COVID protocols have been a little bit more strict than we have here. So for many of them, today is their first day of opening. It's really exciting for them. In fact, I've had my last round of phone calls with everyone over the last 3 weeks, and everyone is just on edge in a good way, like, we're going to open, finally. And just talking about the challenges of this year, but then also the challenges now of change, of like, what are we supposed to do? You know, even ministries that have been around for a long time, and I've said that before, I said, I'm really not sure what we're supposed to do here anymore. You know, it changes in the air. What are we supposed to do? And first of all, going through the change of just going online. So many of them weren't like us, that we have been doing live stream for a long time. And a couple of them says for, God, a month, they just had someone with an iPhone, you know, and hoping it hit Facebook Live somehow, you know. And sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. And of course, hold still, you know, kind of thing. And, you know, could they slowly up their game, you know, bought some equipment and it looked semi-professional. And some of the ministries, and none that I support, but in Center for Spiritual Living, have closed their doors. They just couldn't seem to make it through. Others were, you know, not blessed like we do when own our property, and they realized, and they lost their leases. And of course, why get a place if you can't use it yet, in a sense? So I'm talking to a few ministers that they were doing Sunday service from their living room. And they would kind of pipe in some musicians from another part of the city, kind of thing. I mean, great creativity. And now, though, they're, at least all the ones that are in my little group, they figured out a place to meet. You know, sometimes it's just maybe a theater on a Sunday. They've got an office somewhere, or often the minister's spare bedroom is their office. And so they've all kind of figured it out, more or less. And today's the big day. So, I mean, if nothing else, let's hold them in high regard and bless them for their excitement they have today. But still, this conversation of, okay, we have a place to meet, but in all this change, what are we supposed to do? I mean, yeah, we kind of know. We have some music, and the minister, I talk for a while, and all that sort of thing. We kind of know, but there's a deeper reason why we do things. And so when we talk about vision, it's the larger idea of why we do something. So the question is, for these ministries that I'm in contact with, again, they're asking, what is the larger idea for us now? How has that shifted? How can we be relevant in people's life path right now, especially as we are so at a loss or clueless about our personal life path as a spiritual community. But I think this is a great conversation. I think it's good to feel a little on the edge and maybe I don't quite know what I'm doing or up to. In fact, I think it's pure egotism to think that we have it all covered and we're just done and we just go through the paces right now. So with all the difficult things that we have had this last year and even difficult things right now, at the same time, we should invite the excitement that we can transform into something even better, even though we are saying goodbye to some things. But there's different kinds of change. And we can get sometimes confused about change and permanent change and less permanent change and talk ourselves into believing that something that we do that's not so permanent will do permanent things in our life kind of thing. So it's good to think, well, what is change? So in my blog this week, I wrote about 7th grade science class. Anybody read that this week? Now, isn't it amazing what you remember, what little you remember from like grade school and all that? And why I remember, in fact, not only did I remember this, I have thought about it during the years because it is about change. And so it has stuck in my brain. So my 7th grade teacher was one of my favorite teachers. I went to Catholic school, Sister Mary Veronese. A lot of the students were afraid of her, but somehow we clicked. I don't know if that says more about her or about me, but but we really clicked. And I really liked her, and she was really smart. And I think science was one of her high points in teaching. And so she was teaching about types of change, and she was teaching about what she called a physical change, meaning non-permanent, and a chemical change, something that was permanent. And she gave a great example for this. So example of a non-permanent or physical change are the 3 states of water. We know the 3 states of water really well in Idaho. Right now, if there's water out there, it would be liquid. A few more months, you could like slip and fall on that water because it will be ice. And if it's really hot, and hopefully not going to get that hot, water starts to evaporate into steam. Now, if you have absolutely nothing else to do today, because I know there's nothing to do today in this great place, you could get like a pint of water and you could go through the 3 states all day and just have a party with it. Now I'm going to make ice. I know, I'll put it on the stove and catch the steam and put it back down to water. And then if I can do it again. So when you do that, the water isn't going to change really. I mean, the 3 states have 3 distinct properties, but it's still H2O. It's still water. Again, you could do that all day, all night, until whenever, and that water is still going to be water regardless of what state that it's in. So, in a sense, the change is conditional. The change is conditioned upon temperature. And yes, there's different properties, but you really don't change anything, do you? So Sister Mary Veronese gave a great example of a chemical change or a permanent change. So she said, imagine you've got an egg in your hand. And of course, you know, it's kind of liquidy, it's kind of slimy, but it is liquid. And if you have a hot pan and you break the egg and put it in the pan, you have started a very complex chemical process. Within about a minute or so, it will be a solid. And so let's say, okay, you make a little scrambled egg and you put it on your plate and you let it cool down. It's still a solid. It won't go back to slime. Anyway, could you imagine if that would happen? It's like, God, got to eat that egg before it gets back to slime. Oh my God, it's going down my throat. It's slime. Can you imagine us all at Perry's afterwards? Oh God, got to eat the eggs. It's turning into slime again. But it's a permanent chemical change. It will sit on that plate all day, and it will still remain the same. If you were to heat it up even more, it might disintegrate or something, but it's not going to do the same thing as water. In a sense, until you put it through a different chemical process, it's permanent. So as we as human beings contemplate change or invite change, or change shows up uninvited, even though you may have locked the door and shut the windows, it still shows up, that we can deceive ourselves thinking that we are down the road of a permanent change or transformation, when in fact, we're just boiling some water and freezing it again. See, it's ice. It's completely different now, isn't it? My life has changed. But you walk away, and of course, we know what happens. And as human beings, again, I think I think all of us at different times have desired a real change, but it intimidated us somehow, or we didn't know how to go about it, that we just went to changed the conditions of our life. Like, gee, if I paint this room, it'll be completely different. Well, it'll look different, but it's really not different. I knew someone several years ago that was just in this dilemma for a few years as I talked to them off and on, that feeling change should come in their lives, and even had some things that they thought that they wanted to invite into their lives. And over a 5-year period made, I think it was 4 significant moves throughout the country. And they always came back here. It's like, okay, I went to wherever, and they came back. Didn't work. And they would kind of stew in it a while, and they'd be off to, Phoenix or something, and like, okay, bye, no, I'm going forever, and and see him in Atkinson's in a few months. And it's like, well, it just didn't work out. And they went through this a few times, in a sense, creating just a surface change, hoping that it would initiate a deeper change. Now, certainly, a move could be a part of a permanent change or a chemical change in your life, so to speak. But if we're not going deeper with it, we can fool ourselves into thinking if we just move the furniture around a little bit, that we'll have change. So I think this is something for us to think about now as we are in global change. Do we really just want to move the furniture around a little bit? Or are we ready to open to something a little bit more significant? Are we ready to crack some eggs, in a sense, to really commit and do this? Of course, the next thing is, okay, yes, I'm on board. What do I do? It really is more in the intention and the willingness to work through whatever anxiety or fear that we have about saying goodbye to certain things that can hold us back, and to say, no, I'm willing to have a breakthrough. I reminded myself a little bit this week with the myth of the hero's journey. Boy, it's a big subject that we could talk about for days, but basically it's just any good movie you see is a hero's journey. Basically, someone comes to a realization that there's a call to action. There's something that needs to happen in their lives. And of course, the hero's journey is often done in Greek myths and things like that, but it happens in your life too. And so haven't you ever just like, something needs to happen and I need to be the person to go do it? We all do that. And you're excited. And you think, this is so important and it will be so easy. I'll go and slay the dragon and be home for dinner kind of thing. I mean, it'll just happen. But what happens in this, and I think this is the parallel of what has been going on in our world right now, both collectively and individually, that part of this journey is that you realize that the journey wasn't about what you thought it was about when you started. I mean, what got you out the door, suddenly on the journey you went, oh, that makes it a little different now, doesn't it? And so, in a sense, the real journey of change begins then. And of course, down the road, once you know what the real journey is and you go through your true changes and you return as a changed person, but I think we're in that point now of the story where it's like, oh, it's not about what I thought it was about. Yeah, it was about a pandemic, yeah, but look at all those other issues. Look how it affected my family. Look how it has put me in a completely different direction because something I had counted on is no longer available. So yeah, so I think we're in that stage of the journey, that we're not quite sure where this is all heading, where there's a lot of anxiety and even fear of where we think it could go wrong, possibly. And so the real transformation of this journey and journey of change is to just be grounded in a sense of trust and faith and willingness to do what you're led to do in real time. It's almost a time that you can't plan. Like, gee, the next step of my hero journey in 3 months will be this. Who knows what's in 3 months? We don't. It's less permanent right now. It's a little squishier right now. But that's where amazing things can truly happen. So as we, even for the rest of this month, look at vision, and our life is always about being pulled by a vision. We just don't talk about it for a month. To really spend some time to think, well, ask yourself, where am I in this journey? What have I lost? And even mourn it a bit. And it's okay to let that go. But to also say, well, what doors has that opened? What are some things that are welling up of directions where I feel I should go that I may feel completely an imposter to even think I can go there? That's part of the journey too, the hero's journey, to say, hello, is someone else take this journey? It's a little too much for me right now. And that means you're on the right track as well, when it seems to be just a little too much. So I think it's an amazingly exciting time to be alive for that reason. If you ever said, gee, I wish I could be alive during a time that I could make a significant difference in the world, guess what? You're here. And welcome to being able to be significant. There's no just treading water anymore. We all have that opportunity in our life, and really what it is the willingness to see the presence of the divine in all things, even in its most distressing disguise. We've had a lot of distressing disguises. So that's the opportunity and the way to change. So let's just go within for a moment here. First, let us give thanks for this amazing life, this life of amazing surprises, this life of seeing the presence of the divine in all things, even when it makes no sense. And so now, especially this point in our lives, in our history, that I speak for all of us in saying that we are now ready to open up. To say yes to that bigger change, even if we don't have any idea what that bigger change is. That we allow ourselves to release attachment to what has been. We allow ourselves to release attachment to just, conditional change. We allow ourselves to say within ourselves and to the divine and the universe, I'm here, I'm ready. Use me now. And I know that as we do that, an amazing amount of energy is freed up and let go. That we feel grounded. We feel that we are at the right place at the right time. And we do what needs to be done as directed. So, again, I am grateful for this transformation that we are experiencing in ourselves, in our community, and in the world. And in this gratitude, there's nothing left but to simply let it go, to release it, to release our attachment to it, to release our attachment to how it looks, and just simply let it be and release into the heart and mind and spirit and give thanks. And so it is.